So they've done it again. They've done it again. They're playing with our emotions, Michael. We're going to talk today about borrowing money just got easier. Westpac has started the race. Stay tuned. Hey, yo.
Good morning.
How are ya?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Unbelievable.
It's changing again. Again. Taking up our headlines.
It was only last week I was with Billy Boy talking about mortgage prison. And only yesterday, Westpac makes a bold move of changing assessment rates. So what's happening out there, Michael? Tell us more.
Well, from what I'm reading, this is in direct response to these mortgage prisons that people are in.
What's a mortgage prison, just in case people missed the show last week?
So mortgage prisons for someone, let's say you bought a home during when the interest rates were at their lowest. You took out, let's say, $1 million loan. And then now that interest rates have gone up a lot, the banks lend to you then, they've lent you the money. Now you want to go to refinance because the rates have gone up heaps. You can go find a better rate with someone else, but they go, no, because the rates are this much now, we're not going to give you a loan because it's too expensive for you. And so you're stuck with the loan, the mortgage that you currently have with that lender, in essence.
And it could be super high in interest rate, unbearable. Here are better rates out there, can't get them.
Correct. So this is pretty much what we're seeing now with what Westpac has done, and I'm sure other banks will start to follow as well. And I don't know if it's been implemented yet, but it's all over the media over the past 24 hours, is they're saying they want to change their lending criteria, not for everyone. So they're saying interest rates are high at the moment. We still want to keep that buffer for people taking on new mortgages. We want to do the responsible thing. We don't want people to take on debt they can't afford. But for people that have already got debt, aka people that already have a mortgage, they're saying we want to start to loosen that criteria a little bit for this exact reason. So that way, someone that's already taken on the debt, they're already stuck paying the mortgage. If there's a better rate out there, they want them to be able to access it and be able to refinance.
I can't help but to think, being the devil's advocate, that this whole property market is governed, is commanded, the sentiment, the people, the everything, on the back of it. Look, I probably sound like I'm spooking myself out, but I just can't help but to think that it's all of this is hinging on the government's policies of interest rate rises and reductions. It just seems it is like the direct lever to what the property market's going to do. It's really, really weird. And as much as I think people think they're in control, I just can't help to think that the government's so in control. Which is a good thing, I guess, that there is some sort of order and control and the predictability, whatever. But like, once again, if the government gets tight on banks, on their monetary policies, will the banks tighten up? If they get loose on it, will they loosen up? If they put rates up, they put rates down, directly impacting the property market, directly.
I agree. Contrary, I'm going to put a slightly point pushing against that as well. And this is something that I find interesting. We're now at the highest interest rates have been for the past however many years. Last year, rates were on the way up. The market was on the way down. Now rates are at their new high for the past however many years it's been since they've been at this level, I think 5 years plus. Why then is property prices suddenly starting to jump through the roof? Yes, I agree they can pull that level with the monetary policy, but things are tight at the moment. Interest rates are really, really high, plus your buffer. It's hard to get money, yet there seems to be so many people out there still buying. Sometimes it almost contradicts itself a little bit.
Well, yeah, rates went up, property market's gone up. I would estimate in our core area, 200,000 people, 270,000 people, 100,000 properties. I would estimate our property market has gone up 5 to 10% this year.
I agree. And I think the biggest reason for that, because interest rates and accessibility to money is probably the biggest individual factor. that affects the property market. But I think the second biggest one behind that is supply. And the supply of stock that's on the market and the supply of new housing as well. And I think that at the moment, because on the interest rate side, it's saying, no, the market shouldn't be going up. Money's hard to get. So that's holding it back. So what's the other thing that's pushing it up? And it's that supply of stock. I think that lack of new building that's been taking place over the past few years, along with the low levels of stock of secondhand housing that's on the market, is really what's fueling it.
I know Tony's just said that that's pretty obvious with what we've said about the government controlling the property market by regulating money. Say that again.
100%, I agree. They're the ones, like you said, that pull the levers with it, that have the biggest effect on the market. It's still a free market at the end of the day. People make their own decisions, but they sort of help influence those decisions, so to speak. But without getting off topic with it in terms of the borrowing side of things, it's interesting to see now that with these new high rates that banks like Westpac are starting to push to change the criteria to allow people to refinance. Smart move by them. It just means it's going to drive business their way for all the refinances. As much as I guess these big banks like to say they're doing it for the people, they're doing it for the stakeholders. But if it's a win-win, I think it's a great thing.
All right, devil's advocate, government, like we've just said, okay, fair enough, they've got a lot of power, they've got a lot of influence over the property market. What if they get it wrong?
Well, that's when you see these bubbles and they burst. So not specifically in Australia, but you can see when it's poorly managed by a government. And I think we're actually very fortunate. It's far from perfect, but compared to other countries where you see these literal bubbles where property prices go up a ludicrous amount and then crash a ludicrous amount, that's what happens when they get it wrong.
Well, they've been trying very, 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 very hard for almost 18 months to get inflation at a normal level. Got it wrong.
Yeah. And it's hard because people predict what's going to happen and the way that people are going to react when you do sort of monetary policy as well. That's the hardest thing, and not excusing it, but when you put those things into action, how do you know how the market's going to truly react from it? That's always going to be the golden question.
Yeah, there's nothing. And it's interesting, there was an article last week about Harry Triguboff saying we've got to build our way out of it. So his opinion is more apartments. I don't mind his opinion. I have a lot of respect for the guy, but building more apartments helps the rental crisis. Building more apartments has a huge knock-on effect. The building industry just pushes onto so many other industries that can benefit from it. It would be very expensive to build, I would have thought, in this current market, which is prohibitive for a lot of developers. It's very hard to finance in this market, which is pretty prohibitive for a lot of developers. It's going to be interesting times ahead. All in all, Michael, before we go, borrowing just got easier. If you just tuned in, Westpac's changed their criteria when they're refinancing home loans. Is it for refinancing their home loans or any home loans?
I'm not 100% sure. I believe it'd be any home loans, because the reason why is I think they probably want to try and pull business their way and say, hey, stuck in a mortgage prison with another big bank, come to us, we'll refinance you at a better rate. Makes sense. It's smart business.
And I guess it's not, if there's a good deposit there, it's not as risky for a bank because there's a bit of chunk there. This is something that hasn't settled with me with responsible lending. If someone's got a poor income, but they own a massive chunk in their property and they want to punt their property, they can't because of responsible lending. That's changed. Or for most of my career, people that have got chunky deposits or a lot of equity in a property could do low doc loans. They could go anywhere and get a loan. I'm seeing people really, really struggle that are very, very well off, but they don't have that passive or active income to support a new loan. I think that's really changed the world now. I don't particularly agree with it. I think if you're willing to risk your own money to invest, or whatever that may be, and someone wants to punt that with you, they should be allowed to. But with responsible lending, it's not responsible. Nicole's got to say, read her comment out. Nicole the legend.
Building industry has always led the country into recession. However, it's always been the first industry to lead the country back out. The double-edged sword of the building industry.
Trying to work the world out this morning. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys. But yeah, so just to close off on that, I think with the refinancing, like you said before, when you had money, if you had the cash in the bank, they're happy to lend on you. Now you need the cash flow. And that's the biggest thing that I think people are struggling with. Cash flow is king with it, and now you need so much of it. So I think the changes now with the refinancing to help people out of those mortgage prisons, I think is a really good thing.
And no one talks about open banking, but it happened, where the big four banks can now see into each other's underwear. It's very, very dangerous. It was very dangerous before, where they were sort of lending money a little bit like that. There's so much visibility now with banks that's also making it harder. Nobody wants to admit this. No one will admit this. But the level of paperwork, the level of compliance paperwork for a loan, I know everyone talks about fiscal, like actual interest rates and actual, they're changing it by 1% for, for serviceability and stuff like that. But there's also a number, there's also a figure, or there's a degree of hardness to a loan now, which is so much harder because banks have so much more visibility over their borrowers. Open banking that was introduced meant that they could see if they could see into each other's accounts for their clients. They could understand credit card limits. They could understand how many credit cards they have, how many loans they have. I had clients that would not tell banks that they had a mortgage with another bank, and the bank didn't know. This was like 30 years ago, really. So that's how easy money was 20 or 30 years ago. And my point is the degree of hardness now for people to get loans compared to the old days is incredible. But it's leading to a safer banking environment, a better banking environment. I'm all for it, don't get me wrong, but it's got to be acknowledged that loans are so much harder to get now for that reason.
100%. 100%. Very good.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
See you, Mr. Sillage. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.